Welcome to the Carpenter Critique. Hello, everybody. If this is your first time watching, welcome. And if you are a repeat listener, thank you for coming back and welcome back. We are on episode 9. I've been doing the podcast for about 2 months now, a little bit over 2 months. Crazy journey. I think we're already at 13 followers. Love you all, you 13 peeps. We're in this together. Whoop whoop. And we also have 11 subscribers on YouTube. So hello, big numbers coming in. Hello. But you know what? It's actually kind of funny because this really started as a passion project for me. I love talking about psychology. I want to use my brain. I love movies. And so I wanted to just combine it all. But actually, it's been pretty grounding for me. For those who don't know, I travel for work all the time. So I'm constantly in a new place, working with new people, seeing new places, and eating basically new food all the time. So this has been weirdly the most consistent thing in my life. And I honestly am not mad at it. It's been really fun to be able to kind of expand my world while also I'm like expanding my world in real life by going to see all these different places. And then I'm also expanding my world online by posting all the time, trying to engage with the audience. And yeah, I've found that even though it's kind of random, but a podcast can be so grounding. It's been really consistent and I've been really happy that I have something to work on in the downtime. I'm not really someone who has a lot of free time and then is just like able to rest, really. I need to be moving all the time. I need to be working on something or planning for something. So yeah, this has been good to like focus my mind on one consistent thing every week. So that's really nice. Random emotional dump of the day. But this episode is episode 9. So we're on our 9th week. Woo! And we are talking about the Michael Jackson movie. For those who don't know Michael Jackson, how? Literally how? How do you not know him? I was even just researching for the podcast before I saw the movie. It is crazy, his impact on pop culture. I mean, everybody sees him as the king of pop, obviously. And for good reason. His songs are brilliant. They deserve to be as recognized as they are. His music really brought so many people together and there were so many fans. And it's also something to talk about with the older generation as well. I think the newer generations definitely know who Michael Jackson is, but maybe don't understand the hype or the phenomenon that it was. But talking to even my parents about Michael Jackson, it's like he was and is still one of the greatest performers of all time, if not the greatest performer of all time. And honestly, it gave me really low expectations for the movie because I was like, how are they going to show the greatness that he did without him and all of this great performing without him? Like, is it really gonna line up with how big and grand he was of a performer, of an artist, of a musician? And I hate to say it, I was pretty impressed. I went to see the movie at AMC Stubs A-List, of course, with my dad and my sister, and it was okay. Here's what I'll say. I did really like the movie. I enjoyed basically the whole thing, but what really carried the movie was the performances. Oh my gosh, the performances were so good. Both of the Michaels were absolutely outstanding. The kid blew me away. Like, seriously, he was amazing. When we're introduced to the Jackson 5, young Michael Jackson, the actor that played him, I have to Google, because the actor that played young Michael Jackson was actually outstanding. We need to make him a star immediately. What's his name? Michael Jackson cast. Okay, so Jafar Jackson is the older Michael Jackson, which is actually Michael Jackson's nephew. They did have a lot of prosthetics on him, but he killed it. He was absolutely amazing. I think that's the reason that the movie is so good, is because both of the Michaels are absolutely outstanding. It's a very similar plot to... Hold on, I'm going to find my ADHD is going crazy. Giuliano Valdi, you are a star. You are a star. Your voice is incredible. Oh my gosh, he's 11... a dancer and a social media personality. Well, he better release an album. Release it right now. Oh my gosh, his voice was so good. I was absolutely blown away. I even was kind of sad when they did the transition from young Michael to adult Michael, because I was like, no, I want to see more of the young Michael. He was so good. Oh my gosh. But then Jafar Jackson did amazing. I mean, so after reading a few articles, he has been kind of groomed, or like his family has been raising him up to play this role for so long. So it's good that he did really well. I hope that he had a lot of choice in it, that he really wanted to portray Michael Jackson, and that this is something that he wanted to do and out of his own free will, and not his family just raising him up to perform. But regardless, he's a phenomenal performer. He was absolutely outstanding. The impersonation was really good. The voice that he had, really high pitched. I mean, it was really, really well done. The performances. I would say the plot of the movie dives into a very similar character arc as the Elvis movie with Austin Butler and Tom Hanks. It's this kind of artist versus manager thing. In my opinion, I feel like it's kind of a cop-out for a lot of these artist biopics. With these artist biopics, a lot of them need a villain. And so in the Elton John movie, in the Freddie Mercury movie, in the Elvis movie, and now in the Michael Jackson movie, they need a villain. It's trying to find some type of, like, the artist is the hero of the story, and then there's a villain of the story. And normally in all four of those cases, it's the manager. The villain is the manager. So I'm a little bit over that plot line. And I also think the Elvis movie maybe did it a little bit better. I love Coleman Domingo, and I think he played the role he was given very well, but also I don't think the role he was given was that good. It's unfortunate that a lot of their real cases is that the manager just wants to work them. But as far as the movie is concerned, we have seen that same plot play out now 4 times, and probably more. I haven't even looked into more of the biopics, but at least a lot of the biopics that I've seen, it's the same formula of we're going through the artist's life. Start when they're young, they have a talent when they're young, they find a corrupt manager, and then the manager basically outbooks them, oversells them to everyone, and then they fall into patterns of either addiction or sex or drugs or whatever. Luckily, the Michael Jackson movie, it didn't really touch on the darker points. So that's my other big critique for this movie, is that it really did talk about the good portion of Michael Jackson's life. Though it was hard, his family relations were hard. Basically, the rest of the movie talks about the lightness that he had. So he had a passion for animals and helping children in hospitals, and showed a lot of the best performances. It didn't have a lot of introspection into Michael Jackson. How do I explain this? More of a greatest hits type of thing. The film showed a lot of Michael Jackson's best moments throughout his career, which was awesome to see. But it's also things we've seen before, and the film didn't really say anything new. It just kind of was what it was. It was like, here's the facts, here's what Michael Jackson did. Really cool, right? Which, it was cool to watch, and I was thoroughly enthralled the entire time. If they wanted to take a bigger risk, they could have gone a little bit more introspective with it. Like, if I was directing the movie, or if I was doing a picture about Michael Jackson's life, I would have really thought out what he was trying to say, as opposed to just showing his career. But the film just wanted to show his career, and to his credit, Michael Jackson has an amazing career to show. So that was really cool. I just felt like the film didn't really say anything addition to that. Yeah, and it didn't really explore the darker sides of Michael Jackson as well. It was showing a lot of the positive, which, I mean, I can't fault them for that. A lot of the family was involved in the production, so I'm sure they didn't want to talk about the darker sides. They wanted to talk about the more light and have him be remembered for a lot of the light that he was, as opposed to the darks. I'm not going to fault them for that. However, I will say from a filmmaking perspective and on a rewatchability standpoint, I would have loved a deeper look into Michael Jackson, but because the performances were so good, I'm willing to let it slide. I would give it probably like a 65, maybe 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was really good, and I enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to rewatch those performances on YouTube, especially the young kid. Oh my gosh, I can't stress to you enough how much of a fan I am now. I'm like, is it weird I want to go to this 11-year-old's concert? I just want to hear him sing. He was so good. Just sing some Michael Jackson. Honestly, Jafar Jackson could probably get a concert gig out of just pretending to be Michael Jackson, which I know isn't bad. But like, if he did a Michael Jackson Greatest Hits tour, I would probably buy a ticket. Actually, I would absolutely buy a ticket. And in fact, he should. This is me launching your platform right now. Let's make the tour happen. right now. But yeah, the performances were absolutely outstanding. The cinematography was pretty good too. It wasn't anything super interesting. It was just very well shot. The camera quality was great. I also can recognize that a lot of hard work was put into this film. There are so many different scenes and montages of the Michael Jackson character going in and out of concerts, a lot of elaborate sets and production design. That was definitely really great. So you can see that a lot of effort was put into this movie. All of the costumes are amazing. The background actors throughout the show are really engaged. They got crowds and crowds of people. It was really, really great. So I can recognize a lot of effort went into making the film too. Anybody can see that. For that, I applaud them as well. Great, great job. I just do have those critiques. I would have loved a deeper introspection, and I really would have loved to see if maybe like Michael Jackson wanted to say something with this movie as opposed to just showing off his career. But it's an amazing career to show, like I said earlier. So I don't really have that many complaints. It was really a fun watch, and I recommend it to everybody, especially if you're a fan of Michael Jackson. Also, the movie ends with his London performance, which is, in my opinion, one of his greatest performances of all time. So the movie goes from his childhood to the London performance. And unless they're going to make a Michael Jackson 2, I don't think they will. But if they make a Michael Jackson 2, then they would go maybe the darker introspective part of Michael. But because they were kind of showing the highlights, I think the London performance was an absolutely great one to end on, because it was fantastic. And Jafar Jackson does an amazing job with it. Props to him. Props to the movie crew. I think it was really well done. I would give it a better score than a lot of the critics are giving it right now, but I think the audiences are a little bit overinflated. I think it had something like a 97 on Rotten Tomatoes from audiences, which I wouldn't go that far, but it was really good. Also, my favorite scene of the film, while we're talking about it, is when he sings Human Nature. I cried. That is probably my favorite Michael Jackson song as well. But, oh my gosh, I was a little bit of a mess. My dad and sister were like, "You okay?" But I really enjoyed it. I would say definitely go see it. If you're a Michael Jackson fan, it's a must-see. And if you're just Michael Jackson acquaintance, I guess, I would still say I would recommend go seeing it. And really do see how big his career was and how much he influenced culture, even today. Also, the creation of music videos, or just the reframing of how you want your music to be presented to the world. Music videos are iconic now, and now it's a staple for artists to have music videos to form what their album looks like, give you imagery of what maybe the artist was thinking while writing the music. I mean, absolute trendsetter, and it's permanently shifted the pop culture industry and the music industry because of Michael Jackson. So, very, very cool to see that in the film. I really did enjoy it. I feel like I'm trying to convince you guys now, but no, I really did. And I really liked it. I think I would have done it differently, but that's neither here or there. Let's dive into the psychology study for the week. So I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but one of the other themes of the movie, if Michael Jackson wasn't performing, the film was highly suggesting that he worked with animals. He had a lot of animals at his family home. He also had a passion for Neverland and Peter Pan and fantastical children's stories. So I was going to go the fame route for the psychology study, but I really found that escapism was like an underlying tone of the film, and how Michael was escaping into his music, or he was escaping from reality into his children's stories, or even with his passion project for animals and helping different animals out. I felt like it was a good route to the psychological concept of escapism. The article I chose is Escapism, Suppression of Self or Its Expansion. This study was done in Slovenia. One professor is Barbara Sopcic. She has an MA of psychology. The other one is at the University of Maribor. That is Bojan Musil. Once again, I did look these up to see how I was going to pronounce them, and I did kind of butcher it, but that's who they are. I'm going to give their links to follow them down below. They are brilliant psychologists. I love this study. But it is more about escapism than fame or fortune or anything. So, all right. This study is all about the social psychology concept of escapism. So what the study suggests is that there is a maladaptive process and an adaptive process. So with escapism, you're either suppressing yourself to escape from reality and just be, and not be present in your body, but be somewhere else. And the other part of escapism that the study is suggesting is that when you use escapism, there is part of it that you can use to expand your identity. Say you have hobbies, or for me, like this podcast, escapism can either be one of two things. It's either this term for self-suppression, and you're not really living into who you are. And then there's also this term for self-expansion. So you're expanding your identity through escapism. Maybe if you're watching your favorite movie, or if you're reading one of your favorite books, that's forming your identity as opposed to escaping who you are. Because the authors propose this dual purpose for escapism, and escapism is inherently bad, that's an already different approach than most psychologists would have taken before this. This study came out in 2020. A lot of the studies before that about escapism were just basically correlating escapism to be negative. And what I really like about this specific study is that escapism can be negative, but it also proposes that escapism can be very positive as well. So let's keep reading. Like I said, this study distinguishes the difference between self-suppression escapism and self-expansion escapism. So self-suppression escapism is mainly linked to self-alienation, or isolating yourself from your true personality, and psychological distress. A lot of times the negative self-escapism is really to escape from reality. So you probably have a lot of stressful factors happening in your life. Especially in Michael's case, he had his father who was an overbearing manager and trying to use all of Michael's time so that we could promote the family and promote the Jackson 5. Whereas Michael would then escape and use this, perhaps I would say a little negative escapism, trying to escape his true reality and go into these fantastical children's stories. However, when Michael was performing, I would say this would be a self-expansion escapism. So he knew he was a good performer and he was leaning into that, and he was able to escape into his performances and truly show the audiences what he was capable of. And that was identity forming. He made this identity as a true icon and a great performer. So that is like one example of the great self-expansion type of escapism. Also about self-expansion escapism, engaging in activities that enhance identity and growth. So if you have hobbies, geez Louise, I feel like I'm mispronouncing every single word I'm saying. Okay, self-expansion escapism is about engaging in activities that enhance identity and growth. This is linked to emotional enrichment, flow states. So I was thinking of when on TikTok, it's like when we genuinely reach flow state. I mean, fair. And some people, maybe it's beating a dead horse. Maybe that's when you reach flow state. I absolutely support it because I know that's me too. And also self-expansion escapism does reach personal development. And that's why I think a lot of hobbies, we have this whole dilemma about third spaces. We have the loss of third space. It's just work and home. I completely agree in the importance of third spaces. Having hobbies or having a place that's not, you need to be functional in both areas. So at home, you need to be cleaning or keeping up with cooking or some type of like sleeping. Even there's purpose to sleep. I think there's important to have spaces in life when you're really not essentially needed to do anything. At work, you are needed in many different ways. And I think a lot of people at home are needed in very many ways. But that third space to just be, and probably be doing something that you enjoy. I know for my sister, she has theater, which she loves, and I would say she reaches flow state in that form of escapism and self-expansion. For me, I have this podcast, but I also love to play tennis. I love to go on runs and work out. I would say a lot of people, they have working out. A lot of people have watching movies. Just having a third space to where you're not really expecting yourself to do much, but just expecting yourself to try and expand and try to be and see what happens. So, like I said, this study reframes escapism as a multidimensional construct, not just avoidance. Great. Let's make progress, psychology. All right. So for this particular study, they had 147 participants, all university students. And with the participants, they would have them identify and engage with their own preferred escapist activities. So list maybe gaming, maybe it's social media, any different hobbies that they have that was an escape from either work or school or home. And this is important because the study uses personally meaningful escapism, not artificial lab tasks. So there's not this random, maybe mini game that they have sitting in front of them to escape from their reality. They're asking the participants about personal examples and how they feel during these personal examples of escapism, which is really cool. This design is called a cross-sectional design and also a correlational design. fine. So we're not looking for cause and effect. We're just looking, what are the similar feelings that you have when you're doing this versus what are the feelings that you're having when you're doing this. There is no experimental manipulation, so we're not changing anything about the study. It's simply an interview to describe psychologically how you're doing and how you're feeling in these different activities. The focus is on the relationships between the variables, not the cause and effect. So participants reported on their engagement in escapist activities, and then they completed a couple different psychological scales of measuring their types of escapism, their self-related constructs, so how important do they feel when they're doing these activities, and how important do they feel that these activities are to their identity. And also the cognitive and emotional traits that they have when they're at work versus their emotional and cognitive traits. Cognitive. Ay, ay, ay. I cannot say anything. Jeez Louise. All right. Like I said earlier, we're trying to predict the self-suppression escapism and the self-expansion escapism. And so the outcome variables would be, are they self-alienating? Are they truly being themselves in the activity? Is there mindfulness involved? So are they being mindful about which activities they're doing and how they feel when they're doing it? And then are they reaching flow state? Genuinely, that's part of the study, which I would say ahead of its time. That happens rarely in psychology studies. Normally we're inferring about current events and then the study comes out later, so we're kind of late to the game. But I would say flow state, this was in the middle of COVID when this came out. This would be ahead of its time, I fear. The hypothesis was that self-suppression escapism is positively correlated to self-alienation, and that self-expansion escapism is positively correlated to mindfulness and flow state. Mindfulness would mediate or moderate the relationship between escapism and flow state. So they're thinking that if people are mindful about their hobbies, they would genuinely reach flow state doing their type of escapism that expands your identity. So the good type of escapism. Their results were that self-suppression did result with self-alienation. So when people are in stressful situations and they use escapism like movies or TV or gaming or social media, if they're using it to escape their reality, that does correlate to suppressing yourself and getting further away from your true identity. And people who feel disconnected from themselves are more likely to use escapism to avoid their identity and who they are or their current reality. So that was proven true. However, they predicted that mindfulness in your hobbies would give you the positive flow state from your escapism, from the positive escapism. The hypothesis is not supported. So though that isn't true, it does kind of make sense to me. As I'm thinking about this, when I'm participating in my hobbies, there's a lot of times that I don't really know how it's going to go. I'm just kind of hoping for the best. And also a lot of times I'm just trying stuff out to see what works. When I was first playing tennis, I wasn't like, oh, this is going to get me into flow state. Or when I'm doing this podcast, I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm going to feel flow state when I'm doing this. And I would say that's reflected in the study. It's not this absence of mindfulness. It's just kind of this maybe experimentation and being open to see what happens. And so I would say a lot of my flow state comes from these unexpected experiences, whereas the study was saying only the mindfulness and being intentional about where you put your energy for escapism is how you reach the flow state, and I would probably disagree with that as well. So the hypothesis was not supported about the mindfulness. However, people did find that reaching flow state does correlate with escapism too. It's just not through being mindful. It's through, well, actually, they didn't find what it's through. They just know it's not through being mindful, which for me, it makes sense. But I'm sure they certainly had cases where people, if they're more mindful about their hobbies and their other positive escapisms, that then they would feel like they're reaching flow state. But I know for me, I feel like flow state is a lot more unexpected than my intentionality behind it. That was the findings of the study. So as I said, self-expansion still relates to positive escapism and experiential states. However, it's just not through mindfulness. And the key insight that we can take from this study is that escapism is not simply bad. There is types of bad escapism, and then there's also types of good escapism. So we can take that from the study. Some interpretation of the psychological mechanisms of the study is that feeling disconnected from oneself really does fuel this avoidant part of your personality, and escapism can be used to identify how you regulate yourself. So people can use it to either escape their reality or they can use it to expand their identity, which I think is a really cool, interesting take. And mindfulness does not explain positive escapism as strongly suspected. It also, so because it wasn't proven true, we were able to challenge this mindfulness theory that mindfulness is behind everything. A lot of life's moments are very unexpectedly good. I would say a lot of my best moments in life and when I've reached flow state, it was not because I was expecting to, it was because I was just trying something new. So that's my theory around this positive escapism. Some of the limits, let's go over it, is that they only had college students. Kids ages 18 to 24 were the only ones in the study. Though that is cool that they were able to get so many people. It is a limit because it's such a small portion of our population. This is also a correlational design, so we can't assume that anything causes anything. We can just see different factors that are related to one another. And we can also see that there was bias because a lot of these people probably aren't reliable narrators or they had bias towards their activities. Maybe they liked a different activity better than the other. But either way, those are all the limitations of the study. What this study really contributed to the field of psychology is that it reframed escapism, like we've talked about before, and it expands on the theory that escapism can expand yourself, which I really, really liked. There's also this self-alienation portion, which isn't really talked about too much in society about being distanced from your true self or your true identity, but self-alienation is central to the bad type of escapism. We kind of knew that, but we just wanted to make sure. All right, so what are the big picture takeaways from the study? One, escapism is not inherently bad. It just depends on why and how you use it. Good to know, good to know. Some social emotional learning for you guys today. If your escapism is driven by your avoidance of self, that is harmful. However, if your escapism is driven by growth and engagement, that is linked to beneficial identity. You are gaining more about yourself, gaining more insight into who you are and how you operate in different scenarios of life. So there's very good ways to use escapism. Now, let's apply it to our man in the mirror, which is that not in the movie? Oh my gosh, that song is not in the movie. That's one of my favorite songs by Michael Jackson. Oh my gosh. I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I mean, he had so many hits, it's hard to fit them all in. I was so glad Thriller was in it and Billie Jean, but also like Man in the Mirror. I actually sang that at my high school graduation. I had like the opening line. I was so nervous. Can I even remember? Could it be really me pretending not to see their needs? And it was with choir, so I couldn't be like, could it be really me? It was like, oh. Okay, anyway. Also, I had a really cool title for this, but I'm not going to use it, actually, because Man in the Mirror is not in the movie. But I was going to title this podcast, Man in the Mirror, Escapism, Identity, and the Double Life of Michael Jackson. I literally wrote that down, but I'm not going to do it. I'm probably going to make it like Michael Jackson and escapism or something like that. Anyway, this central thesis of connecting these two is that Michael Jackson didn't just escape reality when he used escapism. He used escapism to both avoid himself and to create one of the most iconic figures in pop culture today. So, starting from the very beginning in his childhood, he had this early fame, as we see in the movie with the Jackson 5, a very stressful parental control in the house. So with his father, he was under a lot of pressure, but also he was in this constant state of not being really safe. His father would beat him, and his brothers, though they were there, they didn't really look out for him. At least that's what the movie portrays. So he had a very abnormal childhood. He also didn't really have many friends his age because he was so famous. A lot of the kids would just take pictures with him and stare at him, and he didn't feel comfortable. So he had a very abnormal childhood, and this is where all the self-alienation began. He had this identity formed around performance and around this icon that he was forming, but he didn't really have an identity formed around himself. And so he's trying to find that, but in the end it ends up being that he'll perform really well and then he escapes into a separate reality with fantastical children's stories and trying to find a sense of normalcy, even though he is a very abnormal situation going on at home. He had this emotional need for success, and that was really suppressed when he was younger. It's all this breeding ground for this negative escapism. And so in the film, Michael is performing and he's doing really well, but also he's extremely lonely. And I would say it strongly suggests that Michael was really disconnected from his true self when he wasn't performing, which it does give you a new perspective. Also, he didn't really have that many friends other than his security guard. And that made me really sad. It kind of gives you an opportunity to see it from his point of view, but also I don't feel like the film really dove into this that much. It was just kind of showing where you could maybe get to his future actions because of what type of environment he was at when he was younger. So then in the second part of the movie, we're now into older Michaels. He's just starting to branch off as a solo artist. He's done a few albums with the Jackson 5 and now he starts forming Thriller, which is amazing. I loved the sequence, but this is where we start to see this positive form of escapism for Michael Jackson. Though he's really suppressed at home, he's able to use all of his experiences to create one of the best albums of all time. There's a couple scenes where he's by himself in the recording studio, and you'll see it's just greatness. He picks up these rhythms, he starts finding these new dances, he wants to write all these songs, and all these songs are brilliant. And it really does capture audiences because they're so catchy, he has fully formed concepts, and part of his identity, if not the biggest part of his identity, is of being a performer and a musician. And so this is where I would say there's a lot of positive self-expansion happening and a lot of positive escapism because he's really able to form such a global icon by himself. And all of this is in him and he's finally letting it go. And so I would say this is a really good view of positive escapism when he's creating this album. And he's not avoiding himself, he's creating a larger version of himself, which I really, really like. Fame becomes this canvas instead of an escape, so he's able to paint with the colors that he wants, he's able to show what type of person he wants to be, he's able to really envision a life for himself through performance, which is awesome. He also has this creation of music being a cinematic experience as opposed to just a listening one, which is really cool. I really, really liked what they did with that in the movie. So this aligns with this flow state, so Michael Jackson reached flow state when creating Thriller, absolutely. And it also argues that Michael's artistry wasn't just talent, it was escapism that was used productively. Props to you, Michael Jackson, creating one of the best albums ever. Now, in the third part, which I don't think that the movie goes over deep enough, this is what I wish the movie would have gotten more, is that there's this introduction of Neverland Ranch without giving us the psychological depth, which would have been a lot to cover in a movie, but still. So I would say he does expand on himself in this childlike way of imagining fantasy and reality. So in Neverland, he builds a world of imagination. He's trying to reclaim his childhood with joy and meaning, as opposed to this childhood that he truly had, which was of suppression and fear. However, while he's building this Neverland, I also think there's this collapse. And so he's really suppressing his adult identity by trying to reclaim his childhood one. And that's one of the hardest parts about adulthood is that you do have to let, especially if you had a good childhood, you have to let it go. Or if you had a bad one, trying to reframe it. At the end of the day, your childhood is going to be your childhood, but he is really retreating from the scrutiny and pain that came from growing up, as opposed to now he's really blurring the lines of reality and fantasy. So this is where the study really comes into play, because as he's creating this Neverland fantasy world, he's, yes, expanding on himself, but also he's really suppressing the adult portion of himself. So there's both positive and negative forms of escapism happening at the same time, therefore proving you can coexist with these good escapism and expanding on your identity, as well as this self-suppression and negative escapism coexisting at the same time. All right, so Michael Jackson's life not only showed that escapism can build a global pop culture icon, but you can also erode the person underneath by using this negative form of escapism and self-suppression as well. Also, what kind of comes into play is that the mindfulness didn't prove the positive escapism, and we can see that with Michael because he did expand on himself and he created this global icon through escapism. However, the positive escapism and creating who he was didn't save him in the end from this deep psychological distress that he was feeling his entire life. And eventually, because he escaped so much, it eroded the person underneath, and he was trying to reclaim that, but it is very tragic in the sense that he didn't eventually have peace with his childhood. So all in all, you can deeply be in flow state and also be deeply disconnected from yourself as well. And that's powerful, and it's also a really hard pill to swallow. I do want to say, I really enjoyed it, and I don't want to leave it on such a sour note, but I think it is important to see that you can be using positive escapism at the same time as maybe escaping yourself. And so it's important to check in with yourself and acknowledge your true identity, as well as diving into these positive hobbies as well. Just know if you are escaping yourself and you're trying to find ways of escaping yourself, maybe ask why. Am I using this to escape from stress, or am I truly trying to build on myself and expand on my identity? It's good to check in. I definitely recommend going to see Michael. It is in theaters now. I also recommend checking out this article, Escapism and Self-Suppression or Expansion. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. My name is Luke Carpenter, and I'm the host of Carpenter Critique. If you want to follow, please hit the subscribe button down below, or you can follow me on all social media at The Carpenter Critique. If you want to find the website, we are www.thecarpentercritique.com. And if you are just a listener, the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music, as well as YouTube to watch. Thank you so much and have a good one. Bye. I'll see you next week. Bye.